Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely wild. It's a brand new framework called CDEG, and it's built specifically for AI doctors. We're talking about a massive shift here. We're moving AI away from just rote memorization and pushing it toward a real, genuine, doctor-like reasoning. So, grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's unravel exactly how science is building smarter, significantly more reliable AI diagnostics. Right off the bat, I want you to think about this question. Can an AI actually learn to diagnose a patient simply by studying its own mistakes? Seriously, think about that for a second. We constantly hear about AI passing medical exams or crushing multiple choice questions, but real-world medicine, it's not a Scantron test. Real medicine is messy, it unfolds over time, and crucially, it requires learning from the moments you get it wrong. Well, in today's Explainer, we're going to see exactly how a new system is giving AI the power to do literally just that, to look back at its failures, find the exact missing puzzle piece, and make sure it never makes that same mistake again. Okay, so to understand the solution, we've got to understand the problem, right? Let's take a look at what researchers are calling a vanilla diagnostic agent. When we say vanilla, we're just talking about a standard off-the-shelf AI model. The problem is these vanilla models haven't been trained for what's known as long-horizon diagnosis. Now, static question answering, easy for an AI. It gets all the info on a silver platter. But long-horizon diagnosis, that's real clinical practice. It's multi-turn. A human doctor doesn't just look at you and instantly know what's wrong. They gather clues, evaluate them over multiple interactions, and then make a call. Vanilla AI really struggles here because it doesn't have all the facts up front. It actually has to hunt for them. And honestly, kind of like a person who refuses to admit they're lost, these standard AIs often just confidently guess the diagnosis instead of hunting for those crucial facts. Let's zoom in on what happens when you put one of these vanilla AIs up against a simulated patient. The whole interaction usually goes off the rails, and it fails in two main ways. First, they just totally fail to acquire decision-critical evidence. They literally miss the right questions to ask or forget to order the right tests. Second, and this is almost worse, even when the evidence is staring them right in the face, they ignore it. They might have the lab result right there, but they basically toss it out when putting together their final diagnosis. It's a complete breakdown in connecting the dots over time. And a confident guess based on bad or ignored data? Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. Okay, let's dive into a specific clinical example to make this crystal clear. Imagine a patient comes in, they have a history of COPD and worsening shortness of breath. Now, keep in mind, any of us could be that patient. A standard vanilla agent might just jump the gun here. It might completely fail to ask for a physical exam and incorrectly guess something like acid reflux, completely missing the mark because it didn't bother to gather enough clues. But when we look at a properly trained agent using the new framework we're discussing today, it is night and day. Instead of guessing, it actively requests a full lung exam, catches the diffuse expiratory wheezing, and accurately diagnoses a COPD exacerbation. It knew exactly what evidence it was missing, and it went out and got it. So what is this magic framework transforming the AI? It's called CDEG, which stands for Counterfactual Diagnostic Evidence Graph. CDEG is a graph-based framework built specifically to learn reusable, decision-critical evidence from historical diagnostic trajectories. Now, that sounds like a mouthful, so I want you to think of CDEG like a razor-sharp medical resident. A great resident doesn't just memorize a textbook. They study past patient cases to learn exactly which specific piece of evidence, a subtle lab value, a specific physical symptom, tipped the scales from a wrong diagnosis to the right one. CDEG does exactly this for the AI. It builds a structured memory of what actually matters. Honestly, if you're in the ER, this is exactly the kind of rigorous, meticulous double-checking you want happening behind the scenes. So how does CDEG actually pull this off? It uses a really elegant three-step process, where each phase feeds right into the next. First up, it has to mine candidate evidence by looking at past interactions. It actively contrasts successful and failed diagnostic paths from the exact same patient case to spot the precise differences in how things were handled. Once it spots those differences, boom, it moves to counterfactual validation. This is where it rigorously tests those variations to prove they actually move the needle. And because it now has hard, validated evidence, it seamlessly moves into step 3, graph construction. The validated evidence gets mapped out into this beautiful, structured web connecting diagnoses, the needed evidence, and the clinical actions required to get that evidence. It literally builds a roadmap for the AI to use in future encounters. Let's actually look a bit closer at that middle step, the counterfactual validation, because honestly, this is the secret sauce of the whole framework. How does it prove a piece of evidence actually matters?
Well, it runs controlled tests, or counterfactual interventions. It basically asks, okay, if I go back to that failed case and add this missing evidence, does the AI suddenly get it right? Or if I force the AI to reconsider evidence it totally ignored earlier, does it fix its mistake? It even tests blocking evidence, checking if introducing evidence against a revision stops the AI from making a bad leap in logic. By running these controlled what-if scenarios, CDOG filters out all the useless noise and keeps only the clinical factors that actively drive a correct diagnosis.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the data straight from the research paper. Take a look at this table breakdown of the incorrect trajectories. See that incomplete evidence state? Over 50%, specifically 50.43% of the errors made by the standard AI happened simply because it just didn't gather enough information. The evidence was incomplete. This proves exactly why a framework like CDEG is absolutely crucial. I mean, if half of your mistakes are happening just because you aren't asking enough questions, the most powerful thing you can do is teach the system exactly which questions are actually worth asking. And that is exactly what CDEG does during inference, which just means when the AI is actively working on a live new case. It tracks the patient's evolving evidence state and constantly cross-references it with that roadmap graph we talked about earlier. As you can see with these prompts for exams and labs, CDEG steps in and actively guides the AI. It might say, hey, based on my graph for this suspected diagnosis, you're missing a vital physical exam. You need to use the stethoscope. Or it might jump in with, whoa, you ignored the hematology panel. Go look at those lab results again. It actively prompts the AI to go get missing evidence or reappraise overlooked data rather than just letting it guess blindly in the dark. Of course, in science, a cool theory doesn't mean much without rigorous testing. So the researchers put CDEG through the ringer across two very distinct benchmarks. First, they used a dataset called MIMIC-IDx for an in-domain evaluation with 200 cases. That basically means testing the AI on data that's pretty similar to what it was originally trained on. But to really push the boundaries, they also used AgentClinic for an out-of-distribution, or OOD, evaluation with 107 cases. This is a big deal because it tests whether the AI can take the underlying principles it learned and apply them to entirely new, unfamiliar clinical scenarios. It's exactly like testing whether a human doctor can move to a brand new hospital and still make the right calls. And this brilliantly illustrates the success of the framework. 11.5%. That is the maximum accuracy gain that CDEG achieved over the vanilla AI agents. Now, in the complex, highly nuanced world of long-horizon medical diagnosis, an 11.5% absolute increase is absolutely massive. To put that into perspective, in real-world terms, that represents countless patients who would have been misdiagnosed but instead received the correct, potentially life-saving treatment, all because CDEG stepped in and guided the AI to the critical missing evidence. It's a real game changer. Furthermore, as you can see on this chart, this wasn't just a lucky fluke on one specific type of AI. CDGE provided consistent, solid average performance bumps across multiple different doctor-agent backbones. We're talking models like Gemini, GPT, and Claude. On average, across all these different systems, CDGE improved accuracy by 7.63% on the in-domain MIMIC dataset and an even more impressive 8.88% on the out-of-distribution AgentClinic dataset. This proves for sure that learning decision-critical evidence is a universally powerful technique. It doesn't even matter what underlying AI architecture you're using, the framework just works. But hey, accuracy is only half the story, right? Efficiency matters just as much in medicine. What the researchers found is that CDAI doesn't just make the AI more accurate, it makes it vastly more efficient. Because it knows exactly what evidence actually matters, CDAI prevents the AI from ordering unnecessary tests or going down endless clinical rabbit holes. The data showed that CDAI consistently reduced the average number of diagnostic turns and actions. It gets to the right answer faster and with way less wasted effort. In a real-world clinic, that translates directly to less patient discomfort and significantly lower healthcare costs. Let's move to the next point and see how this builds, because to truly prove why this works, the researchers ran an ablation study. That's essentially turning off parts of the framework, kind of like taking a spark plug out of a car engine to see how much the performance drops. When CDG was fully operational, tracking both missing and ignored evidence, it achieved a 33.33% correction rate on failed cases. But when they removed its ability to utilize missing or ignored evidence in the graph, that correction ability dropped sharply, down to 25.64%. This proves you absolutely have to track both what the AI failed to ask for and what it saw but foolishly ignored if you want the maximum benefit. So the crucial point is really captured in the core philosophy of this entire framework. As the paper states, reliable long-horizon diagnosis requires moving beyond trajectory-level experience reuse toward evidence-level learning. What this basically means is that it is just not enough for an AI to remember that it got a case right or wrong in the past. It's not enough to just copy-paste past actions. True AI medicine requires the system to understand exactly why the evidence matters at a really granular level. By learning the precise factors that truly shape clinical decisions, we can build AI that doesn't just parrot medical textbooks, but actually reasons and thinks like a seasoned clinician.
This shift from simply retrieving past memories to actively learning what evidence shifts the needle is a massive leap forward for medical AI. It brings us one huge step closer to diagnostic assistants that are truly robust, efficient, and reliable. Honestly, it makes you wonder, a decade from now, will the best doctor in the hospital be a human or an AI that has systematically learned from every mistake ever made in medical history? If you learned something new today, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Open Life Science, OLSA, for more simple and insightful science explainers. See you in the next one.